So you are about to dive into your first permanent 3-rail layout, and you've decided to use O or O27 tubular track. Great! These are tried and true track systems that are durable, available, and that have served O-gauge operators for a century. But what turnouts should you use? After all, in O27 track alone, you have the choice of Lionel, Marx, Kline, and others. They all work with O27 track, but which is the best? Well, the honest answer is, it depends. Hello again, this is Mike with another episode of Toy Train Tips and Tricks. This video topic was suggested by a viewer. On my permanent layout, I use turnouts from a variety of manufacturers. Each brand has its own strengths and weaknesses, and so I use different types of turnouts for different purposes. Let's break down the turnouts that you are likely to find on the market today for O27 and O-gauge tubular track, so you can choose what works best for your layout. Let's start with O27 track. Remember that both O27 and O-gauge share the same track gauge or distance between the outside rails. The main difference between the two are that O27 rails are not as tall, and that O27 track has a tighter minimum curve, 27-inch diameter circle, compared to the regular O-gauge track. If you wish, you can use regular O turnouts with O27 track if you shim the O27 rails to match the higher O-gauge rails. Also, no one is currently manufacturing turnouts for O or O27 tubular track systems, but many are still available on the secondary market as they've been manufactured for 70 years and longer. And unless abused, they will last for very many more years. The most common O27 remote turnout found today is the Lionel 1122 and its descendants. Manufactured from 1952 through the late 1990s, these turnouts are durable, reliable, and common. Post-war versions feature a lighted lantern to indicate the direction of throw, while modern-era versions feature a red and green colored plastic shield to indicate turnout direction. Modern versions also feature a lever to change direction manual. Otherwise, the turnouts are identical and use most of the same electrical and mechanical parts. The turnouts operate well with all Lionel post-war products and most other brands of locomotives and cars, those that can operate on O27 curves. The exceptions are many Marx locomotives and some pre-war Lionel locomotives that use large gears that make it impossible for these locomotives to pass through the guardrails of the turnouts. All of these turnouts feature automatic routing, or the so-called non-derail feature, whereby the metal wheels of engines and cars cause the turnout to switch in the direction of a trailing point train, meaning one coming from the diverging route. To accomplish this, special insulated track pins must be placed on the inside rail of each of the two diverging routes. One variation to watch for is the original 1952 version of this turnout. This switch does not require insulating pins, but it has a larger switch motor housing that will not permit F3s and some cars to pass through. All of these turnouts are internally wired to run on track power. Because of this, anytime any part of the train is on the diverging parts of the switch, power is sent to the switch motor. This may cause the train to slow down and, in some cases, may burn out the switch motor if a train is parked on the turnout for long periods. Later in the modern era, Lionel added a turnout with O27 profile rails and an O42 curve to the lineup. This turnout utilizes the same basic design as the O27 version, but allows for the operation of larger engines and rolling stock. These turnouts were not made in large quantities and so are more difficult to find. These Lionel turnouts are an all-around good choice for most O27 operators. The next most common O27 turnouts were made by Marx. The most common Marx turnouts feature an all-metal construction and were offered with O27 curves. Marx also made plastic turnouts that utilized O27 or larger O34 curves. The metal Marx O27 turnouts were first offered in the 1930s. Over the years, they were produced in a variety of colors. Some versions feature a lighted position indicator, but most do not. These metal turnouts feature what is known as a frogless design. This means they have no need for guardrails, so wheels of all types can pass over them without trouble. The frogless design also eliminates gaps, so cars that are backing up on these turnouts are less likely to derail on the tight O27 curves than on a regular Lionel turnout. As a result, I like to use these Marx turnouts in yard and industrial tracks where I intend to do a lot of switching. The downside of these turnouts is a gap in the center rail that can sometimes trap Lionel and other brands of center pickup rollers. However, these turnouts can easily be modified to correct this problem, as in the video link at the top right of the screen. Marx turnouts are not internally wired to the track and so must receive power directly from the transformer. As a result, they do not have the non-derailing feature built in, but they can easily be modified for this feature if desired. These Marx metal turnouts are very durable and are usually less expensive than their Lionel counterparts. On the other hand, I do not recommend the Marx plastic turnouts. While they do include a special sprung frog design that accommodates both regular and fat-wheeled locomotives, they lack guardrails, so heavier locomotives and cars tend to derail on them, especially when approaching from the facing point or the non-diverging route. Perhaps the best of the common O27 turnouts are those that were made by Kline. Kline's O27 turnouts were available with either O27 or wider O42 curves. Early versions feature twin bulb position indicators on a large motor housing, while later versions are low profile with LED indicators. Like Lionel's O27 turnouts, Kline's come internally wired with the non-derailing feature, and like Lionel's, they require insulated track pins on the inside rails of the diverging routes. Unlike Lionel's turnouts, Kline's feature power limiting switches so that trains occupying the turnout do not send power to the switch motor after it's been thrown. With no additional power going to the switch motor, more power is available to the train, and switch motor burnout is highly unlikely. Kline's turnouts also come with additional wiring posts, so the operator can choose between track power or transformer power for the turnouts. And like Lionel's O-gauge turnouts, these turnouts feature internal contacts so that block signals can be added to them to indicate turnout positions. If there are any drawbacks to these Kline products, it's that the switch motor housing on the early versions is a bit unsightly, and there is a tall ramp around the switch frogs that makes them a little rough for passing rolling stock. Like Lionel's turnouts, Kline's will not accept the fat-wheeled locomotives. Because of these extra features, Kline's turnouts tend to be priced a little higher than their Lionel counterparts. Kline made far more O42 turnouts than did Lionel, so in this case, the Kline versions are both easier to find and less expensive than the Lionel versions. Some other O27 turnouts you may run across include Lionel number 1121 turnouts. These were made from the 1930s until 1951. They look a bit like smaller versions of Lionel's regular O-gauge turnouts. They lack the automatic non-derail feature, but they will accommodate fat-wheeled locomotives. As with Marx turnouts, these early Lionel turnouts require some additional track pins in the center rails to accommodate modern pickup rollers. And of course, all of these O27 turnouts were also offered in manual control versions as well. The most common turnouts for larger O-gauge rails is the Lionel number 022 turnout. These were made from 1938 into the early 2000s and utilize 031 diameter curves. They are pre-wired for the non-derail feature and are set for track power, but they can easily be modified for transformer power. Like the Kline turnouts, Lionel 022 turnouts have an internal contact that allows them to be wired with block signals to show the direction of the switch. Also, users can swap the switch motor housing from one side of the turnout to the other. Lionel also made number 711 and number 731 turnouts with O72 wide radius curves for standard O-gauge track. These work well but can be very difficult to find. Lionel's O-gauge turnouts will not accommodate fat wheel locomotives. Overall, Lionel's number O22 series turnouts are common, reliable, and durable. Less common than their O27 brethren, Kline also made a line of O and O42 turnouts. These models have the same features as their O27 counterparts, but with the taller O-gauge rails. Kline also made some of these in their Super Snap Track series, featuring a black center rail and more realistic track ties. While not specifically made for tubular rails, many operators consider the products of Ross Custom Switches to be the best turnouts that are in current production. They are available in a wide variety of curve radii and configurations, they're reliable, and they look great. However, they do come with a premium price tag, and they may require some rail shimming or special track connectors to work with tubular rails. In summary, if you're using standard O-gauge rails, Kline turnouts offer some premium features, but Lionel's number O22 turnouts work well and they're easy to find. For O27, Klines are again fully featured, but a little harder to find. Lionel's 1122 series are the standard O27, and they're very easy to find. If you want a frogless design, or if you need to accommodate Marx or pre-war fat wheel locomotives, Marx's metal turnouts are cheap and abundant, but early Lionel number 1121 turnouts will also work for this. So which is best? Well, it depends on your equipment, your budget, and on your operating needs. I hope this video has helped you decide which turnouts are best for your layout, and if so, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment about your favorite turnouts. Whichever you choose, keep the trains running, and we'll catch you next time on Toy Train Tips and Tricks.